podcast called Jellison Podcast.
First ever type 1 diabetic in UFC history.
Doing fine, Dub. Nice to be with you.
Get out!
He's like, yeah. My tunnel vision and my periphery, I'm like off field.
Hey, you know how it is, though. Hey, when your team.
I don't remember that. That's crazy.
What's up, everyone? We're back with another episode of Jellison Podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Mercer assistant coach and former Purdue Boilermaker, DJ Byrd. DJ, how you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for coming on. So I know you just got back from vacation. So how much needed was that after just the stresses of the basketball season?
Well, I think, every coach in the country could tell you they needed a vacation. And it was just kind of fortunate for me that my family, I haven't been on a vacation with my sisters and mom and dad and, nephew and new niece, stuff like that. So it was good to see some family for a week, enjoy some weather, and now back at it here, recruiting some players and off-season workouts and that sort of thing. So I think I speak for every coach, and they were like, man, after that, it was nice to get away for a minute and enjoy time with the fam.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you're already in Georgia. Like, I don't know if you know, up here it's snowing today.
Right.
So, I mean, well, where'd you go for vacation?
We went to Destin, Florida. My mom was able to find a place either off Airbnb or Vrbo or one of those things that pretty close to the beach, easy walk. And then I got to enjoy the pool for a couple of days of rain, but it was nice to be with fam nonetheless. Yeah,
it's a lot nicer than up here though. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's been up and down. I've talked to my, the parents up north, and it gets cold and hot. I know how that is. It's about 65 here today, sunny, so it's not bad. That's one thing I've noticed about Georgia. You get about 10, 11 months of warmth and more for me, like kind of like you understand it's cold up there. So, we don't mind keeping it 65 in our house, 63 during the winter months. And then obviously during the summer, you use the AC to keep it a little cooler because it gets pretty warm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you kind of talked about how basically every coach in the country kind of needs a little vacation, time to get away. So talk about all the protocols that you guys had to go through and how stressful it was for not only the players, but the coaches and the rest of the staff within the program.
Well, I think it was just the uncertainty. You kind of got used to daily changes, schedule changes. We were supposed to travel to New York to play Syracuse. We were supposed to play at LSU. Obviously every team had to restructure their schedule we were able to play some good teams in state. We were able to go up and beat Georgia Tech. We played Georgia State twice, got them one of those, we split with them, and then played at Georgia Southern, got a big win down there at the last second on a buzzer beater. So, that was kind of the first step, is getting scheduling right. Let's get some games. And then when it comes to protocol, every day in practice, obviously temperature checks. We're fortunate enough at Mercer University to have our own student health center that was early in terms of testing and having our athletes tested. So we were able to do that. By now I can't remember the frequency, but it was pretty frequent. And even to this day, we still get tested weekly, and for those that aren't vaccinated and everything. But it was just different for our guys in practice, being a college athlete and not being able to go and see your family or see people. Same for the staff and same for everyone around you. You want to try to limit that exposure to, what could be, 1, 2, 3 week delay or just total cancellation of practice, and whether it was preseason or during the season. So obviously that happened with every team. You had a positive test here, a positive test there, or it was a false positive, or you had some issues there. But at the same time, the main priority was just trying to keep everyone as safe as possible and taking every precaution to do so. And I think Mercer did a pretty good job of doing that with the testing, with our protocol, with our just the way we had to do things down here. As Purdue did. I saw a lot of stories about them, and they might have had to do it more extreme than even us. So every school was different, but overall, I think everyone had to do a good job to keep college basketball going.
Mm-hmm. And did you guys have any positive tests during the season?
We had a couple. A couple of them were preseason. They were like in the summer when we went home. So it was, they had to go through. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm not one of the athletic trainers. One of our athletic trainers, actually from Purdue, Christian. That was his job this whole year of just keeping everyone organized and all that, man. So it was a lot for them. But we were fortunate not to have too many players miss any games. So, but we did have a few. Yeah, just unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean it's just bound to happen with.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at Sasha Stafanovic; he missed 3 games, and he was the
Yeah.
only guy on Purdue to get it, which is just one of those weird things. So, yeah, I can.
Yeah, that is kind of odd.
Yeah, he said I had him on the podcast while he was quarantining. He said that he thinks he got it from like one of the workers at the hotel when they played Ohio State.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, that was the hardest thing probably is we had a similar situation. Like one gets it, the roommate doesn't get it. And it's like, what's going on? How is it transmit? And again, it goes back to the uncertainty. Not everyone knew exactly where they got it, how they got it, or if they had it and didn't know it, all that. And I'm kind of in that position too. I might have had it, but I don't remember a time when I might have, but I still get tested, and I've had all negative tests this entire time. I think I've had over 100, but at the same time, it's different for everybody.
Yeah, 100%. So you guys, or how, like during the actual season, I know practices probably don't look the same as they would pre-COVID. How hard is it for teams to improve throughout the year, just given the different circumstances?
Well, I think it's you're juggling a little bit more in terms of your student athletes have a lot of responsibilities, obviously, in terms of school, study halls. You could go on and on about all that. So just kind of adding the COVID thing, adding those, you want to keep your players in the right mindset. They're expecting to come in, they want to, be able to practice and play big time games in front of fans, and especially at Hawkins Arena. We expected to have a full house here this year. We had a good season last season, finished top 4, and then coming in here, all that stuff happened, and it kind of changes the outlook. You're playing and not in front of fans. So I think the main thing is just trying to keep the players focused on what we wanted to do. I think it depends on kind of what you do in terms of a basketball team. Like obviously we run a lot of offensive stuff, motion type plays. Obviously with Coach Gary coming from the offensive coordinating position pretty much at Purdue, we did a lot of similar things down here. So you got to put a lot of time into that. So that's what we did, is really put a lot of time into our offense and had guys that could excel in kind of what we did. So just trying to keep your players in the right state of mind, I'd say was probably the priority. And I think they'd tell you the same. It was like, it's tough going from class to study hall, and then I have to go back to my room. I can't see anybody. I got to do my best to, limit interaction. And so I think that was probably the biggest thing.
You talked about the success you guys had last year and this year. I mean, the turnaround that Coach Gary and you and the rest of the staff have done at Mercer has been pretty cool to watch from a Purdue's fan. Or as a Purdue fan, I should say. So just talk about like how you guys came in, and you guys came into a team that was under 500, and then you guys have been building the last 2 years.
Yeah, well, I came down with Coach Gary after I was a GA for 2 seasons at Purdue with Coach Painter and the staff, and I came down as director of operations. So with me, it was obviously a lot less on the court and more itinerary schedules. I could go on and on about the responsibilities as a Dobo, as any Dobo would tell you. But we came in and we had a good group of guys that just kind of wanted to win. They kind of hated losing in years before. So going into our first season, it was like, hey man, we got to get guys that really want to do this, really want to do that, and do it at a high level. And we had a couple seniors that were unbelievable. They stayed with us. Georgie Dimitrievich, Ethan Stair. Georgie plays overseas in Spain, and I think Ethan's participated in the Purdue TBT. He actually played on the team that played in the summer last year. So those guys were huge parts of that. And then be able to surround them with some shooters and a couple big guys that gave us good minutes and everything. So coming into the second year, we kind of hit the hiccup like everyone with COVID. So you have some games throughout the year. We started the season strong with some big wins in the first 5 games, starting 5-0. And then, we lost a player here and there due to injury or protocol type stuff. So, for a game we don't have him, we play Wofford, we play Furman, and we're missing guys, and just like every team had to deal with. So we had some ups and downs from there, just with consistency and the rotations we had to do. And so we ended up, putting it together more at the end of this season. We made it to the championship of the Southern Conference tournament and made it to the last day, 4 games in 4 days. And even the last 4 minutes of the championship game, man, we had a couple really good looks. against UNC Greensboro, who had a great team the past few seasons, and the best player in the SoCon Player of the Year, Isaiah Miller, and so like we were right there. We almost needed just that last 4 minutes of legs to knock down those jumpers, and we pretty close to going to NCAA tournament, which would have been pretty awesome. I mean, especially with the tournament hosted in Indianapolis this year, it was always like, man, we were so close to possibly playing in Mackey Arena, at Mercer. So, we were just short, but it gives us some confidence and motivation for this offseason. Like, hey, we had these struggles throughout the year during the COVID year, and at the end, we were still able to pull it together. Like, imagine what we can do for this next season. So, just keeping that in front of our guys, like, hey, man, we're right there, and just to keep working on what we're doing and doing it at a high level and consistently. You see all those videos of coaches saying doing it the right way and culture. I'm sure you saw those. And what is the right way? Well, it's how we do our things. It's how we handle our business, our repetition on a daily basis. So that's what we're sticking with as we move forward.
Mm-hmm. And you kind of mentioned the little like up and down swings that you guys had throughout the season. Mm-hmm. So I think it was you guys lost 3 games in a row, like 4 or 5. Mm-hmm. When you're in that position, how does the coaching staff kind of get through, and how do you guys as a team like just make a switch and can get back to the winning ways?
Well, yeah, and you look at those 3 games, and a couple of them I think were 80 to 83. We scored 80 points, and we lose by 3 points. I think one was at Furman, another one I can't remember. It was a close game. Most of our 3 or 4 of our losses were by 3 or 5 points. And so for us, it was defense. So like mid-season, whether that defense let up and we got comfortable, or it was just something we had to keep working on. It was like, we scored 80 points. We should win this game. We scored enough to win this game. We got to do a better job of rebounding. We got to do a better job of contesting 3-point shots. And so that was kind of our biggest struggle mid-season, was rebounding the ball. I think UNC Greensboro, the first time we played them at their place, they scored 18 points off of our offense. We gave up, I can't remember, 6 offensive rebounds, and off those 6 offensive rebounds, they hit 6 threes. Or it might have been like 10 and they hit 6 threes, but either way, they hit 6 threes off of offensive rebounds, which, those are demoralizing plays, and we had 6 of them. So it's like, man, we've just focused throughout the year towards midseason. Man, we got to rebound. We have to play better defense, and you got to find guys that really want to win, to really, because to go midseason where you're at and you lose a couple of games, like, well, what's going on? Well, you got to play harder defensively. Like, when our shots are right there. So that was the biggest thing right then, to try to turn it around. And we got some big wins from there, and some ups and downs defensively and rebounding. But at the end, we were able to put together and play good basketball throughout the conference tournament. And I think we ended on a good note.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, all of us Purdue fans were watching you guys throughout that tournament and up until the final game. How much did it sting for your guys to come up that close?
Well, I think, for up until this point, one of our seniors, Ross Cummings, one of our best players, second all-time 3-point shots made at this university. Like, that's the first conference tournament that he'd won a game in. And so that was our motivation. Like, let's do it for our senior. Let's do it for Ross. Let's win. So we beat Stanford, and like, hey, let's get the next one. And we were able to get Wofford, and then we were able to get VMI, and it was just it kind of came together where we just built some momentum. And I think it was good for our younger guys to see that. Maybe guys that didn't get to play as much, guys playing for our seniors, and I think that was the biggest part of that right there as well.
Mm-hmm. And I wanted to go back to kind of talk about your path in coaching. So you played overseas for a season, and then you ended up coming back and coaching at the high school level. Mm-hmm. So talk about that process of ending that career and then focusing on a new one.
Yeah, well, like you said, I was able to play in Germany right after college. And, at the time, that's the first time I'd lived away from home. I obviously grew up 30 minutes from Purdue, played at Purdue, and then got shipped off to Germany kind of by myself. And, I had a couple of American guys on my team that kind of helped me learn. They'd been pros before, and it's pretty awesome to get paid to play basketball. But, at the same time, you see it's so important to take care of your body. It's so important to get in the gym and earn your spot. and everything. And it was cool because my mom was able to visit. She'd never been out of the country, and for some things like that. And then at the end of the season, when it came time to go somewhere else, I was like, man, you know, my sister's playing, Kelsey Byrd, she played at IUPUI at that time. A cousin, Grant Gaylor, he was playing at Bethel College in Mishawaka, and there was a lot of games, and I just felt like I was kind of missing some stuff. And at the same time, it was like, you know, do I want to keep playing, or do I want to go back and get back into coaching? So I came back from playing, and I kind of went a different way. I was like, well, let's see what I can do here. Let's see what it's like outside. So I did some real estate stuff. I interviewed with a few financial planning, interviewed insurance. I was like, man, I like basketball too much. I've played for too long. I know the game. I love the game. I love both playing it and coaching it and teaching it. So that's where I was like, I got to make a decision. I was able to get on as a volunteer assistant for my alma mater for my cousin's senior year that year before he went to Bethel. And then after that, I found a JV coaching position with Brad Dickey at Franklin Community High School, just south of Indianapolis, and had 2 seasons there before being a GA at Purdue. And then it kind of led me here. So going through all that, it's been a process, but it's just about, you know, where can I improve and keep, you want to get to the highest point you can get and you know, help as many as you can along the way. And that's all been coaching, teaching basketball, which is pretty fun.
Mm-hmm. How do the coaching styles kind of change from the collegiate level to the high school level? Because I feel like, I mean, you played at Purdue, one of the best teams in the Big Ten in the country, year in and year out, and then you go to a high school team, and they maybe, I mean, obviously they're not going to execute as well as high D1 schools. So do they kind of get under your skin at all? Like, you're so used to seeing such a high level of basketball, and then you go to the high school level and kind of have to sit back and change your kind of like your coaching style, I guess.
Yeah, I understand that. And it depends on the level that you're coaching. Obviously, when I was at Franklin, it was a great learning experience for me because I coached our 3rd grade team, and then I coached our 7th grade team. And then, you know, we had facilities that we could host leagues and tournaments and camps and all kinds of stuff. And it was a great spot for that. So I was able to work with a variety of, you know, kids and players throughout the state, and especially that community in that area. But it depends on who you're working with. How far to the fundamentals you need, even though some of the basic fundamentals you need at the highest level, a lot of times you can adjust. You know, I work out with Dakota Mathias. You know, he's been down here working out with us, and I don't say anything to him. Like he has his workout. He knows what he's doing. He's been at the highest level. You know, so I help him pass and guard and do a bunch of stuff to help him, you know, try to improve where he's trying to improve. But then, you know, when you go back to coaching high school basketball, you're obviously not recruiting your players, you know, at least you're not supposed to at the high school level. So you have the players that you have, and you have to adjust to that. What are their strengths? This is how we're going to change it. You know, do we have shooters? Do we have big guys? So there's a little bit. And then at the college level, you recruit the guys that you get, which has been a lot different now. The transfer portal has changed everything, but I'm sure we'll get into that. But so it's not frustrating by any means. It's just a different challenge and a different point of view to try to help the kid that you're working with or the team that you're working with to be the best they can be. And, you know, to watch kids see hard work pay off is like the best thing. You know, so whether a kid wants to accept coaching or not, like you're gonna keep trying. And the ones that get it, it's fun to see them do something they've never done before. They hit this shot or do this move, and they look at you like, hey man, that's us working. Like that's the coolest part for me. So it doesn't really matter the age. It's just you got to kind of adjust to that.
Yeah, and you did mention the transfer portal. I was going to ask you about that. I think as of right now, there's like 1,200 or 1,300 guys in there.
Yeah, it might be 15 now. It's getting there. There's more and more kids every day. Yeah.
So I mean, I can kind of tell you're not a huge fan of that, and I think they just passed a rule where they're allowing the one-time transfer without the like redshirt season. So what are you guys, coaches at Mercer and then coaches around the country, what do you guys think about this whole transfer portal?
Well, I'm not going to speak for coaches around the country, but personally, you know, you look at, and I'm not saying it's every kid, but some kids, they meet either a point or a wall that, whether it's some sort of adversity or something's not going right. And now this and COVID obviously is the whole reason we're in this situation. But now it's like, oh, I can just transfer and everything, I got new options, new opportunities. But a lot of guys, hey, your problems will follow you. If you don't go to class, you're not a good teammate. You don't, like, those things will follow you. Anything an institution is going to ask of you, which is, one, go to class, do your best in school. 2, bring it every day, be a good teammate. And I'm sure you've heard those things before, because that's what every coach wants. They want good teammates that want to get better, that love the game of basketball, and that want to help the team win. So if a certain player is not a part of that top 6, 7, they don't think they're a part of it. And it's like, well, that's too bad, because next year is probably your time. You just have to keep working. But I think kids now are getting distracted by the portal and just, hey, I can go into the transfer portal and I'll find somewhere else. Maybe I can play more. But what they find out is it doesn't always go that way. You go there, and I was averaging, 8 points here, and I should have been averaging 15. And I go to this next school and things are looking better, and then things don't turn out the way that I thought. So I've seen some kids that have been transferred to 3 or 4 schools by now, which is kind of, whether it's JUCO to Division I or Division II, and then now the one-time transfer, they're back in the portal, seeing what's next, and to each their own. But at the same time, it's tough. It's tough now for a lot of coaches, especially, whether we're trying to fill roles or we're trying to find somebody. But at the same time, the high school kids, the 21 class, even the 22 class is going to have a kind of a rollover effect from this season's one-time transfer rule, and with the scholarships allowed at certain universities, seniors coming back. So I don't know how it's going to turn out yet, but it just kind of seems off. But maybe we can get some good players out of it. I don't know. That's kind of the goal, I guess. But you got to make the best of the situation. But I'm not a huge fan of it, because I was always one that you meet adversity and you try to beat that. You try to overcome that, whatever that is. So it depends. Everyone's situation is different. That's how I'll keep it.
Do you think that it'll impact mid-majors more, like hurt them? Because, you look at guys that maybe they've redshirted 1 year at, say, Mercer, another mid-major, and they're averaging 20 points a game their junior season. And then they're like, hey, I can go play for a Big Ten team or ACC, SEC. So do you think it'll hurt the mid-majors more?
I don't know the overall effect that it'll have, because I haven't looked at the exact statistics, but at the same time, I think kids that have tried that, it only works out for very few. They go from a mid-major to a high major. Mm-hmm. They think their 22 points a game is going to transfer to the higher level, which again, it's in cases it does, but I think most overall it doesn't. But kind of the way I look at it now is that more, whether they're Division I programs or mid-major Division I programs, they're looking for kids that have playing experience now. Like, we need a guy to come in right away and give us minutes, or do we take a high school kid that's good? And we would take him probably if we had our, certain guys that hadn't transferred or graduated, so it's the 21 class now. Those that would normally be going to a mid-major are now probably going to a low major or an NAIA or a Division II. So I think some of the lower level schools will pick up better players because of the portal, and kind of how that's a different effect that I've noticed too. But so it's difficult for everybody. I know kids that have committed to schools and their coach has gotten fired and they've been committed for a few years, and now since they've been committed, they haven't been recruited, and now it comes to where they might have been a Division I player, but now they're looking at transfers instead of him as a senior in high school. So it's like, even though he's a really good player and could probably play there, but so that's kind of a different effect that I've noticed so far, and we'll kind of see how that plays out over the course of this season. And at the end of the summer, when there's still a ton of players in the transfer portal and those kids are still there, what happens then, and what do they do? Where do they go? Because like you said, there's 12, 13, 1,400 kids in the portal now. Are they all going to find a spot? So
yeah, there's a bunch of different variables. But I really appreciate you talking about kind of working through adversity. I remember when Purdue had Matt Harms and Joe Eastern transfer last year. Paint went on Dan Doggett and ripped them a new one, basically. I don't know if you saw that or not, but
I saw that, yeah.
He essentially said, I mean, you might have gotten your degree from Purdue, but you're not a Boilermaker if you walk out. And I feel like that's a pretty consistent theme with a lot of fans and coaches, because they try to give their all to these players, and then they think, oh, you're not good enough, I'm going to go somewhere else and have a better opportunity, which sometimes it is. But yeah, I mean,
yeah, that's tough too, because I know Matt. I worked with him a lot over my time there as a GA, and know Jell the same. You know, and I haven't talked to Matt about this, but in my situation, he just must have thought that, you know, his minutes would go down, since they already went down before Zach Edey got there, before Travion was in his next season, you know, as a top, you know, candidate in college basketball. And then he was able to get his degree from Purdue, and I don't know what all went on there for him to want to transfer and go to BYU, but he's obviously playing there, and you know, good for him. And then Nogel, I'm not sure of his situation as far as you know, what he wants to do. I know he's still working to try to, you know, play somewhere, no matter where that is, whether it's overseas or in the G League or whatever he's trying to do. You know, I wish he would have got his degree from Purdue. That would have helped in terms of transferring and maybe finding another opportunity. But like I said, do you want to, you know, do you want that challenge? Do you want to try to overcome that challenge, or now there's a way to get around it and go a different route? So I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we can get off of that now, but so I want to go back to continue your path in coaching. So what was the process like of coming to Purdue as a GA, like you mentioned, for those 2 seasons?
Well, that was tough too, because I just started a business when I was at Franklin too. I was starting kind of my own travel team, and we had some plans for, you know, a team camp and a few things in the works with that. And quick story, I was actually, because I wanted to get back into college basketball, so I was looking for different GA positions, and I got a call from what was Kansas State. It was Coach Weber's staff. They were looking for some GAs, and I talked to Coach Weber a couple of times about the position. At the time, I was living in Indianapolis and driving down to Franklin and both coaching the players at the school and trying to build this travel team business and everything, training and camps and all that. So one day Coach Paint texts me and goes, "Congratulations, man. Like, you'll do great down there." Like, well, Coach Weber is a great guy, obviously, and you know, those Purdue ties and everything. So I was excited. I was like, okay. And I, you know, told my, I guess fiance at the time, girlfriend at the time, Ashley, I was like, "Hey, we might be moving to Manhattan, Kansas." And she's like, "Oh, really?" So, you know, we kind of started thinking that way. And, you know, a week, 10 days went by and I hadn't heard from Coach Weber. So I called him back again. And I was like, "Hey, Coach, just want to call out the position and maybe some schooling opportunities." And he's like, "Yeah, well, you know, I've talked to a few former players, and we might have one come back for that position and everything." So I was like, "Okay, well, why did Coach Paint text me?" Like, "Congratulations." And Coach Paint was like, "Well, he's kind of all over the place and everything." But it ended up working out because the day I was supposed to do my continuing ed to be able to be a teacher at the high school is the day that Coach Painter called me and said, "Hey, we've had a couple of positions come up. One of the analytics positions with Andrew McClatchy's now in, and then 2 GA spots." So I was able to get that kind of at the end before I had to take more schooling for the next season. But it also was, it was a great step. At the same time, I was in the middle of, you know, a bunch of travel team stuff, and I had to stop doing that because of NCAA recruiting violations and potential violations from doing both. So I had to stop doing that. And so the coaches at Franklin kind of helped take over, and they still did a bunch of tournaments and leagues and stuff like that. But that's kind of what took me to Purdue as a GA, where I was able to help the staff in any way I could, and day to day working with players and just the student athlete life again. It was kind of fun for me to come back and be in that position, because I wasn't too far removed from basketball as a player. So just trying to help navigate those kids through just everything you run into.
Yeah.
On a daily basis, whether it's school or social stuff and all that.
Mm-hmm. How much were you able to learn in those 2 years, and how much could you contribute to those guys, considering that you'd kind of been there, done that within the program already?
Well, it definitely helped that I'd played and knew offensively and defensively what we were supposed to do and what we were trying to do, even with the guys that we had. So throughout those 2 years as a GA, I was kind of Coach Gary's right-hand man in terms of our offense and stuff. You know, I helped Coach Lutz and Coach Brantley And obviously Coach Paint with some scouts once we got to some tournament times. Like I had, a couple scouts that I was responsible for, which was good experience for me to do those things. But mainly helping Coach Gary during the game because, he's looking for the next, he's not even watching defense. He's down here and he's drawing up a play or writing down the name of a play. So I would just help him, hey, whether just watching different things throughout the game, hey, they're switching this or they're not opening up on this back screen. We might be able to get them with this play and just kind of be in his ear, kind of about what was going on with the game, or they're high hedge and we can get a slip to the rim, stuff like that. And then he would be like, okay, I know a play that can do that. And it's just kind of cool to watch, to have his playbook in his head and go through like, okay, what's one of those plays that has a high ball screen slipping to the rim that'll be open. And you saw that a lot with the year we went with Carson Edwards and those guys to the NCAA tournament. But there was a few times when Carson Edwards just had the ball and it's just the same play every time. Hey, ball screen, ball screen, ball screen. And then he would do his thing and it worked out for him. But that was probably my biggest thing, was I'd help with stuff like that on the sidelines during games. And I think that was a good experience for me. And getting to this point, it definitely was.
Mm-hmm. And did you notice anything about Paint? Like, had he changed from the time you were playing to when you were a GA, or notice anything that you maybe had it as a player?
Well, and Rob Hum will tell you this too. I think now he's lightened up a little bit. Not lightened up, but just changed his wording a little bit. Some of our, like looking back, some of our practices were really hard, tested a lot of your will and just physically, mentally, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And not that he doesn't do that now. I think he does it in a different way. The couple of years I was there, I was like, man, practice is only like an hour. It's like 2 hours during this time of the year when I play. Like just little stuff like that. But he's still the same coach and one of the most down to earth guys that I've known. And our relationship has kind of changed throughout the course because you go from being a recruit to a player, to an alum, to a GA. So you get to see a lot of different sides of Coach Paint, and every side of him has been just as genuine as I've ever known. And he's just a wealth of information and knowledge and stories and memories and interactions with coaches that he's had and players that he's had. And there's not a lot of people I think that have a lot of bad stuff to say about him in terms of coach. Like mm-hmm. He's one of those guys, and you see Raef and those guys' testimony. Like it's no different for everybody. He coaches you where he can try to make you a better player and what you do to help Purdue win. And that's what we try to do here, is how can you help us to help Mercer win? And now we're in off-season stuff. Now we can develop and edge towards other things. But during the year, like what can we do tonight to have Mercer basketball win? He does a really good job with guys at Purdue of that and them playing their role. But there are some standards in terms of defensively, how good you are defensively, and then how often you box out and rebound. Those are some big things for Purdue and what they need to do.
Mm-hmm. And for you personally, do you carry some of Coach Paint, a little bit of Coach Gary, or a mix of different coaches you've had in terms of your coaching style, or do you just kind of do it on the fly and do your own thing?
Well, yeah, coaching styles have definitely changed the past 10 years in a lot of different ways. But yeah, I've learned a little bit from each coach, but it's more about the player you're coaching. Some players can take certain things, some players can't. Some players perform better when you say certain things this way, or if you explain them a certain way. So I think it's more of a one-on-one with each player. You expect more from your leader. You expect more from your senior. You expect more from guys that, they're just not playing hard enough. You expect more from, it's reading each player and trying to see what you can do to have each player, get the best out of them, and to get them in the right mindset of doing that that's what coaching is. And so I think seeing that, experiencing that both as a player, being around different coaches, talking to different coaches, teammates I've had that are now coaching or, watch basketball every day as an analyst or, commentator or assistant coach. Shoot, some of them are head coaches now, whether it's the high school level and all that, is just kind of seeing, guys you played against and different coaching styles, but, taking it all in. And like I said, it depends on the player, it depends on the squad you have and how tough they are and how tough you want them to be.
Mm-hmm. How often do you talk to some of the guys that you kind of mentioned, whether it be like Ryan Smith down at Incarnate, or just about basketball, or just checking in with them to talk about family or what else?
Well, group chat has probably been the best thing. I got group chats all over the place with different coaches, different guys, friends. But Ryan Smith and those guys are kind of in one of the daily ones, whether it's Drew Anthrop's with the Lakers, Rob is doing his thing with ESPN, the Big Ten Network, and 3-on-3, and Ryan down in San Antonio at Incarnate Word. Just shoot, even Bob Riddell being back as the radio guy and voice of Purdue basketball is pretty cool. So, you stay in touch as much as you can with a lot of these guys, and that's probably one thing I need to do more of. Like, you get caught in the season, you get caught during workouts. You're like, man, I haven't talked to this guy in a while. Like, let's reach out to him, see what's up. So that's probably the biggest thing. But you try to stay in touch with guys and learn about their past, their situations, where it's taken them. It's a fun part of the business, and it's not an easy business, but at the same time, there's a lot of people doing it, and we want to be good at it. So we try to share information and help each other out whenever we can. And I think that's what a lot of that's what Purdue guys do. I mean, whether it's Coach Painter or those guys are always available resources to us no matter what. And that's probably it's not a recruiting pitch if it's true. Like, that's a pretty cool thing to have such a family of coaches, players, alumni, parents, friends. I mean, it's pretty cool to be a part of that. And at the same time, you learn a lot from those connections and from some high level coaches and people that have been in the business for a long time. So I think now everybody's trying to figure it out as far as the transfer portal, but it still comes down to the same stuff in terms of coaching and wanting your players to be great.
Mm-hmm. And going back to your time playing at Purdue, how do you think you progressed both as a person and a player on the court over the course of those 4 years?
Well, a lot. I mean, as a high school player, I was probably a little squirrely in terms of shooting bad shots and stuff. But one thing I always remember is just I did play as hard as I could a lot, whether it got me in trouble or it got me too many fouls. Like, I did do that. I did play extremely hard. And going into my freshman year, it was a change because the speed of the game speeds up. Like, high school basketball to college, much faster. To the NBA, it doesn't look as fast, but I'm telling you, the NBA is so fast. Those athletes are so fast and strong, and to do 24-second shot clock up and down, I mean, those are elite athletes, and that's why they're the best players in the world. So the speed of the game for me is I wasn't really playing that position. I was just trying to find a niche. In my freshman year, I was able to kind of find the niche at the 4 spot. And unfortunately, it kind of came after an injury of one of our players, which I don't like to talk about because it was sad. But at the same time, that's kind of where I kind of found a role to be able to play. And I don't know if kids lose sight of that or kids think they should be playing it different, but I came in as a 2-3 shooting guard. And, when I got to that level, I was like, dang, I just kind of look slow. I watch myself. I look slow out there. That's not a 2 or 3. I got to be able to guard a 2 or 3 if I'm going to play the 2 or 3. So at the 4, I was able to still be strong enough and quick enough to guard guys in the 4 position and still be able to shoot the ball in the offensive position. So that's kind of where I found my niche and kind of where I stayed throughout my college career, and just adapting to a role that we needed, and not afraid to get your hands dirty. I think teams need more of.
Yeah, I mean, you stepped into an absolute loaded team with guys like Jawani, Twan, Robbie, Lou Jack, Brian, all those guys. So what was it like to kind of go through those 4 years, and you started off on a super high, and then it kind of dropped off in terms of team success towards the end. So was that kind of difficult for you?
Looking back, at the time it was difficult too. Like my freshman year, we were ranked 2nd in the country because we had each one more, Jawan Johnson and Robbie Hummel, and the players that you just mentioned. That's what it was a good thing though, because I came in with such a standard. Like Chris Kramer was the senior there, and from the first day, like you could see this is how things were done. Like you saw how hard he played. He was just going to take your ball. He did. I'd just be in practice, and I'd be sitting there, and he would start pressuring me, and then just take my ball like I was a little kid. And I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta grow up quick, man. But that was just that that's one memory that I have, and Chris will probably might see this, but that was just one thing that I took, and I rolled with that. Like you can win games by playing as hard as that dude does, and that's probably the biggest thing. But when I kind of progressed through though and got to my senior year, my senior year we went around 500 in the Big Ten, and struggled a little bit in terms of shooting, but we didn't have great 3-point shooting success, and that was kind of what I did. So, when the teams are scouting Purdue, it's like, hey, he's the only one that can, is shooting a decent percentage from three. We had some guys that made some threes, and Tyrone had some big games for us, and guys that, but overall for a Purdue standard, like normally we have 2-3 guys that you got to cover. So when you don't have those, defense condenses and makes it tougher to score. And that's what I look at it now as a coach. And at the time I was just, you're frustrated, you're losing. And, you don't want to be a guy that's losing and they're not frustrated. Like, you don't want one of those guys in your teams. You want guys that are frustrated and are kind of upset in practice to where, you get the best out of your team. And I think my senior year, which was 12-13, AJ Hammonds was huge for us that year, as a freshman. Raef was a freshman at that time, and Raef will be the first to tell you everything wasn't easy when we were losing. So you kind of see everyone's character, and you want to try to improve the best you can, and so you got to have those ups and downs. And that's one thing I can say. Like, I've seen Purdue at some of their best teams and best players, and kind of seen at both ends where we really struggled there at the end as well. So. With that experience, you see what wins and you see what doesn't win. And that's one thing we try to help our players with, and understanding that, Coach Gary has seen winning players. He's seen winning, what it takes. So we're going to keep giving you that information, give you these tips. You just have to understand that it's not going to be easy, but if you can do those things and do what's asked of you and just continue to consistently, do those things, you're going to win games. And so that's one thing that we try to do with our guys is, we've seen it. We've been on both sides. And I think that's a good experience to have, having a down year, having a good year, just remembering what got you there.
Mm-hmm. And I have a question about Raef, because he talks about how he couldn't go to chair when he first came on to Purdue and then ended up being defensive player of the year. Was he really that bad on defense?
He might say he was. He wasn't that bad, but like I said, as a freshman, I didn't know what I was good at and what I struggled with until I went out there, and I was like, dang, I got to get better at this. So like Raef will tell you, hey, I had to get better at this. And you know what he did? He's one of those guys that's it's what I'm talking about. When you're struggling or you hit adversity, like, what can I get better at? What do you want to be? What do you want to be remembered by? And I think Raef has done a good job of, of showing that this is what I want to be remembered by. And that's why by the time he was a senior, that culture had changed, and they had some really good teams going into, right before I came back as a GA.
Mm-hmm. And during those first 2 years, obviously, you guys had a massive load of success. Is there a particular game or stretch of games that sticks out to you as most memorable?
Are you talking for me as a player or GA or both, or
as a player?
As a player,
or both. I mean, we can do both.
Well, I've been fortunate to be a part of some pretty awesome games. Like, I was thinking about this earlier, and we had college game day when I was it my freshman year? No, it was my sophomore year, because we played Michigan State, and college game day was there at Mackey Arena, and that's the first time they'd ever been there, I think. It might have been the only time. But that was a really cool experience because they had the fans there all day. They had the set up there all day. And it was a good game for us because we ended up winning too, and the place was super loud. And speaking of loud, another game when each one had 38 points against Ohio State, and they were ranked second in the country. And that is the loudest I remember Mackey Arena as a player, because as a player, I remember I kept running and crashing the glass, and each one just kept making it. And it got to a point where I was like, God, I'm tired. And he hasn't missed one yet. Like, he just kept making shots, but I was crashing every time. And it just got to a point where, man, this is ridiculous. And each one made some crazy shot, or it might have been Jawan's dunk at the end that kind of sealed it. But the place was so loud that I remember running back on defense, and I couldn't hear anything. My ears were popping, and I saw Aaron Kraft dribbling the ball, but there was no noise. Like, it was one of the most memorable as a player in Mackey Arena anyway. And then obviously as a GA on the sidelines, seeing the performance from Ryan Klein and Carson Edwards in the tournament that year, and the games we played versus Tennessee and Virginia, which as a Purdue fan, Tennessee was awesome and just so sickening for the Virginia game, man. So close, and such a good group of guys to get that far. An amazing performance from both of them, especially Carson there versus Virginia. Just felt for him. And but some of the best games I've been a part of, both on the sidelines and as a player. Those are a few of them, even though there's probably a few more I could go on about.
Mm-hmm. So during that Elite Eight run, especially in the Virginia game where he scored like 42. When you guys came, when they came to the sidelines, was it just like, all right, we're gonna focus on our defense, Carson, you just do whatever you want?
It wasn't really, it wasn't said like that in the huddle. Obviously Virginia was one of the best defensive, and even offensively, they did simple stuff, but they were so good at it. You know, they screened so well for their guys, and obviously they had some players that could really, that could shoot it, that could really create plays for them, and they were playing their best basketball, kind of like we were. You know, that was why I think it was one of the best games. But on the sideline, it was just continue to do what we're doing. We have to take them out of this, take them out of that. Don't give them easy looks, and it was just so tough because even when we didn't give them easy looks, they still hit some, and it was like those are going to happen. Make them shoot contested shots. We can't have any breakdowns to where they're shooting wide open shots, especially a team like that. So that was probably a big priority for, you know, for us and what we were talking about. And then offensively, it was just keep moving, spacing, screening, and then fortunate for us, it was you can crash if you want. Like Carson's probably hitting it like in your mind. It was. But that's funny too, because that brings up another point. We were watching the Tennessee game. It was on TV it was a few weeks ago, I think. And I'm sitting on the sideline by Coach Gary, and all my friends were like, how are you not reacting when he's hitting all these shots? Or I think it was Klein we were talking about versus Tennessee. It's like, how are you sitting there so still? And I'd just been accustomed. It was like watching a movie. Like I was locked in with helping Coach Gary and what we were doing offensively, and it just seemed like a check mark. Okay, like he hit that one. What's next? Well, shoot, they're struggling that ball screen. Let's go with it again. And if you watch that game, you see him come off a ball screen, a single ball screen, two guys, and he's just getting his game on and shooting. And it just kind of kept working and getting him to his left hand because Carson likes to go left and shoot off his left hand. So little things like that are what's going through Coach G's mind, and how, you know, you can get the most out of that situation. And then defensively, Carson did a better job in the tournament of guarding people. You know, he wasn't always the best defender, but man, he really helped us when he played defense as hard as he could. And, you know, you saw him play defense as hard as he could. It's like, you're not going anywhere. So little things like that are, you know, it's kind of what's going on the sidelines with that stuff. But still a couple of the best games and one of the most heartbreaking losses. But
yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't want to talk about that loss too much.
Yeah.
I was super sad. I wasn't even there, but I mean, you've had the pleasure of watching so many great players at Purdue, playing with them, being one of them. So what do you take away from those type of guys, like an Etuan or Carson or Robbie or Jawan?
Well, you see that it's just different because they weren't 5-star recruits out of high school. You saw Etuan progressively got better. You saw Jawan progressively get better. You saw Robbie progressively, even though they were the baby Boilers and they came in and competed well from their freshman year, you still saw them improve, especially Jawan. You know, Jawan's freshman year, he didn't get a lot of minutes because his body wasn't there yet. Mm-hmm. And he kept working to get his body right and be able to shoot extended jumpers and get to the 3-point line. And I think that was probably the biggest thing with those guys is you see development. Well, why do they develop? Because they worked on it all the time. Etuan Moore is still in the NBA. How is Etuan Moore in the NBA? It's no secret, man. He works every day. He's a good teammate. He knows his role. He practices all the time, the right things at NBA speeds. And it's like, once you get to that level and you have that discipline and, you know, that professionalism about you, that's what everybody wants to get to, especially if you're a player. And Rob would have been in the same position. He just had some injuries that really inhibited his growth. And Rob, he'll tell you this, he was really good at a lot of things, Rebounding, he was pretty good at. He could shoot pretty well. And then, you know, obviously he understood offense, how to screen, how to get open shots. And, you know, he'll say in the NBA, you have to be really, really good at like maybe one thing. If you're really, really good at one thing, whether it's rebounding, whether it's blocking shots, whether it's passing, ball handling, for the most part, you know, that's not everything. But, you know, it was like, to be really good at one thing in the NBA can find you a role, and you can make millions of dollars playing that role. And I think a lot of kids right now at the college level don't get that because they're not looking at contracts like that. But at the same time, it's what's my role and how can I help this team win? And if you can do the Grady Eifert thing, and you can help your team win just by doing what you know and what you do well. So it can happen. So that was probably the best thing, is development of a lot of those players and watching them see how they got there and how they got as good as they got. Jawan's still playing too. He's playing over think it was Turkey, or he might be back in Germany now. I don't know. He's kind of bounced around.
Yeah. So do you have any good baby boiler stories or stories from 4 years at Purdue?
Baby boiler stories. Like, well, I committed early as like a 16-year-old, like after my sophomore year. So I'd watched Purdue, and Coach Payne and all those guys would tell you I'd made the most unofficial visits of any recruit ever, because I was 25 minutes down the road, and I was like, hey, you got a couple tickets? So we'd go to all the games, and I pretty much knew a lot of the players before I even got on campus. So that was helpful, and just being able to watch at that time the baby boilers play, even though they were freshmen. I was, excited to be a recruit, a commit, and coming in to play with those guys. So that's probably one thing about it you don't know, is that I came all the time as a recruit, man. Sometimes they won, sometimes they lost, but it was fun. It was really fun. That was before all the renovations too. Like, that I think a lot of people forget that Purdue's facilities now are so nice.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, super nice. Basketball, football, women's basketball, volleyball, like they're all extremely nice. And when I committed there, like none of that was there. So I still remember what it looked like before. And I'm like, man, not a lot of people remember that. There are some, but players now, they're like, oh, this is nice. Like, man, I committed before. I was just excited to be here, excited to be around all the guys, all the players. We had a little locker room, little couch and TV and stuff like that. So it's awesome that Coach Payne's built it into what it is now and had the success that he's had.
And last thing before I let you go, who was the best player you played against at Purdue and the best player that you played with?
Okay. The best player that I played against at Purdue. Shoot, man. There was a lot of teams that we played that had really good players. Sometimes good games against us. Man, the Indiana team that had Cody Zeller, Vic Oladipo, Jordan Hulls. And I grew up with Jordy. I played with Jordan Hulls all the time. But man, those 2 years they had some really good games. And when Oladipo got to his, that second year, he was extremely good. So they had a great team, man. And shoot, who else? Even Ohio State has some, like, they had guys that played well against us, like whether it was Deshaun Thomas or my freshman year, Evan Turner. When we played Michigan State, like I was guarding Draymond Green. Like he's a pretty good player, right? So like there was a few of them. So it's tough to come down to just one, because there's a lot of good college players that some are in the NBA now, some are, but guys that have had success in the NBA. Those are probably the ones that have been the best.
And then what about, I'm gonna make you pick the best player you played with at Purdue. You got to pick one.
Got to pick one. Best player I played with at Purdue. Since I played with, gosh, it's got to be each one more. Because he could score it so well. Like he could score it, but like he wasn't the fastest dude or the strongest dude or the most explosive. He's the only guy that I've seen dunk his own free throw. I don't know if people remember that, but we played West Virginia at Mackey Arena, and this dude shot a free throw and it bounced on the rim, and he legally waited for it to hit the rim and jumped up and dunked it. And I was like, why was that never like on top 10? That was one of the greatest plays I've ever seen. So like he was always crafty and could shoot floaters and threes, and I think the other guys would agree with me on that. But at the same time, there's been some good players I played with Juwan and Rob, those guys. But I got to go with each one just because he could score it so well.
But I don't remember. Well, I was only 9.
That would have been 2000, probably 2011.
So I was like 10 or 11 when that happened. I don't remember that, though. That's insane.
Right. Just a quick fact. Look it up. I don't know where it's at. It might be on YouTube. Pretty impressive play by each one though. But yeah, he's pretty skilled, man, and that's why he is where he is today. He's with Phoenix, and I think he's right behind Chris Paul there in the depth chart area. So he's doing all right for himself.
Yeah, for sure. All right. I'm gonna let you go. I've held you a little bit over.
No worries.
But I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. It's awesome for Purdue fans to watch you and Coach Gary have success at Mercer. So all the success going forward, and stay safe down there.
All right, man. I appreciate it, and appreciate having me on the show, and good luck to you and all you're doing too. It looks like it's going pretty well, man, and I'll be following you.
Yep. Thank you so much.
Have a good one.
You too.